Hey, guess what? Your readers want to read your ideas, not someone else's. So good to see you. I mean, it's always good to see you, but I'm especially glad that you're here today because we'll be talking about you, and it would be awkward if you weren't around for it. Well, more specifically, we're going to be talking about how you can balance your voice and the voices of your sources when you're writing a paper that involves research. In those cases, it can sometimes be easy to let your sources take over the paper and do all the talking. But a good research paper is not just a summary of the things that your sources say. A good research paper should do a good deal more than that, and today we're going to talk about just what that is. Our goal is to help you to achieve a proper balance and keep yourself in the spotlight of the papers that you write. So let's get on with the show. Imagine for a second that you just got a new hat and that you go to a gathering with some of your friends and you ask the host what they think of your hat. And they say, "Oh, I kind of like it. I think the mix of polka dots and triangles is a little bit quirky." Then later in the evening, you ask one of your friends what they think of the hat. And they respond, "Oh, I know the host likes it. They think the spots and triangles are quirky." How would you react to that? At the very least, you'd probably be disappointed because you didn't ask your friend what the host's opinion was. You were asking for your friend's opinion and you just didn't get it. Worst case scenario, you might even think that your friend was avoiding answering because they actually hate your hat. Now imagine a scenario where a reader comes across a paper that you wrote about a topic that interests them. They're eager to find out what you think about that topic, but instead all you do is report on what your sources say. From start to finish, your paper is a thorough and detailed and professional report on the thoughts of other people on the topic, but that's not what your reader was looking for. In that case, how do you think a reader would feel? Probably a little like you after your friend gave you the host's opinion on your hat. When your friend tells you your host's opinion instead of their own, you might think that you could have saved everybody a lot of time by just asking your host again what they thought of your hat. Similarly, a reader who reads only other people's ideas in your paper might think that they could have saved a bunch of time by just reading your sources instead. The people reading your paper want your thoughts on the topic, and yes, they do want you to cite sources, but those sources should play a supporting role to your own ideas. They are, after all, reading something with your name on it, so it should be unique to you in some sort of way. But it's easy for sources to take over a paper, especially because so many writing classes put so much pressure on finding, evaluating, and citing your sources. In such an environment, it's easy to think that your sources are actually the most important part of your paper. When you spend so much time looking for them and worrying about them, it isn't surprising that they sometimes take over as the star of the show. But we don't want that to happen, because your ideas are valuable and your readers do want to know them. So let's move on and talk about some of the ways that you can keep your sources in their place and keep yourself in the spotlight. The simplest way to ensure that your paper doesn't just turn into a report on what other people have said is to make sure that you always say something about your sources whenever you cite them. Any source that you drop in without any sort of commentary is a source that threatens to take over your paper. For example, here's a paragraph where the sources do all the talking, just the sort of thing that a reader isn't looking for. You can see here that this paragraph provides information that is, no doubt, very reliable and accurate, but the writer's own voice doesn't appear in it at all. It's just a functional report on what other people have said. The writer has given up the opportunity to say anything about their sources, and as a result, has given up their place in their own paper. So in any case that I can think of, your plan should be to say something about your sources whenever you cite them, and that can happen in three main ways. The first is to interpret those sources, using your own insights to help your readers understand the sources that you're including. You can just explain what those sources mean, but you can also interpret your sources by explaining why they matter and what your readers can do with the information that you're presenting. See how the information from the source is the same as before? But now the writer has done something to interpret it, telling us what the key takeaway from the source should be, and also explaining briefly how the source supports the argument being presented. The source still takes up a lot of space in the paragraph, but it's clearly being used to support the writer's purpose here, rather than taking over the paragraph completely. Sometimes your writing may call for a different strategy. Interpretation is one way to go, but you can also keep your sources in their place by contextualizing them. By themselves, your sources are just random bits of information floating out there in the universe. As a writer, though, you can maintain better control of your paper and make better use of your sources by explaining how they relate to each other and to your argument. In other words, you can provide context, showing your readers how all the pieces that you're presenting fit together, like with this paragraph. In this version, again with small adjustments, the writer is not just a mindless robot repeating what other people have said. Here, the writer is present as someone who understands the sources and how they fit together. They can give the readers an understanding of the sources collectively that they couldn't get by reading the source individually. In that way, a writer who contextualizes sources is giving readers something that they couldn't get elsewhere. They're adding value to the paper and staying in the spotlight as the one in charge of all the moving pieces. Of course, you could also respond to your sources outright, telling your readers what you think of them and why. For example, here the writer states their views on the sources, openly challenging and endorsing their respective claims. Obviously, a writer who is responding so directly to their sources is a writer who is starring in their own paper as they should be. And you might even notice that the writer has put the sources into context with each other in the way that they responded to them. If so, you have a keen eye. It's a good reminder that these strategies for handling sources are not mutually exclusive. They can overlap at different times and in different places throughout your paper, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Hey, guess what? You're a smart person with good ideas, and you're probably working on a paper that only you could write. So it would be unfortunate if your sources got out of control and ultimately squeezed your own valuable voice out of your paper. When that happens, your readers won't get to see your insights, and they'll probably leave disappointed, wondering why they didn't just read your sources instead. Luckily, it's pretty easy to make sure that your ideas stay in the starring role. Just make sure that you're commenting on your sources in some way whenever you include them in your writing. You can interpret them, telling your readers what they mean and why they matter. You can contextualize them, telling your readers how they relate to each other and to your larger point. You can respond to them, telling your readers whether you agree or disagree with them and why. And of course, you can do any of these three in any combination you can think of. As always, these aren't strict rules, just a reminder of some things that you can do to ensure that your sources play a supporting role to your insights and to make sure that you add as much value as you can for your readers. So get out there and put your sources to work as supporting players in the grand drama of your intelligence. Your readers will be glad you did. And of course, if you have any questions or things you'd like me to talk about in the future, just let me know. I'm here to help you succeed in the kind of writing that you want to do. So thanks for sticking around. I'm already looking forward to seeing you again soon.